Hello, welcome to Tobysblogs. Ned4000 asked me to talk about my writing and the stories I am creating. I like writing. I used to write loads of scripts. I enjoyed writing loads of scripts. I'm writing scripts at the moment. I have a project going on and I write different scripts and abandoned products. But one thing that I'm writing is this book. It's a novel. It's a fantasy novel. I called it the Chronicles of Seladon, and it's hopefully going to be like a trilogy or more. I've got a few books planned out, and it's about a land called Seladon, and there's an evil part and a good part, and there's all different places and different creatures that live on this planet. And the first book is about the evil and how the evil evolved. The good guys have to put aside the differences and accept the magical creatures in and use them to destroy. It's more exciting than that, but I'm going to read you a section from my book, which is the newest chapter I've written. It talks about the genesis of how the evil was created, and this is the first draft of it. So I've done through about 5 drafts of my book, but I just added in this one and I thought I'd read it to you. So you can get a glimpse of what it was. But I'm quite proud of this chapter, the way of how the evil creatures. So we have the people. We have Vladimir del Toro, who is my main villain, and he was banished to the land of Mithka, which is the evil land, which was made dark and evil by him because he likes it or something. And then you've got the main capital of the place called Elesmra. Elesmra is the capital where the monarchy lives. There's a monarchy, and the first prologue chapter before this would explain all the monarchies and how it all came and what happened and stuff like that. And so here we go. So that's the kind of the plot you need to know. Okay, so it's chapter 1, the genesis of evil. Okay, so in the reign of King Philip, there was a notorious family of killers called the Deltoras. The head of the family was called Grimta, and his wife was called Theodora. Both of them worshipped the evil malevolent guardians of the underworld, Apollyon. Theodora, an evil sorceress, would love to lure her victims in and thrived on their pain, as she tortured them in the most horrific of ways. After Theodora had finished, Grimta would kill them, butcher them, and eat them. They had 2 children, Baroth and Bellatrix. When Bellatrix was 15 years old, her house was raided by a Seladonian army. Bellatrix ran, followed by her brother, but her brother was shot down by an arrow. Bellatrix turned around and saw her brother die. In anger, she screamed and let out an almighty surge of power, which totally destroyed her brother's killer. Feeling weak, she stumbled into the forest and slumped behind a tree and fell asleep. When she woke, she returned to the house to find her mother and father dead, both brutally murdered, with their throats cut and blood pouring out of their sloping mouths. Bellatrix screamed and fell to the ground. She felt so angry at her parents' demise that for 3 years she travelled the land, killing millions as payment for her family's murder. The king called her the slaughter of Seladon. Eventually the armies closed in and she had no choice but to cross the sea to the Tarfarian Isles. She reached the Isle of Obscuro, an island of paradise full of beautiful flowers, waterfalls, rivers and mountains. The Tarfarian Isles was home to the Tharn, a race of peaceful creatures who loved pleasure and beautiful things. A Tharn was wandering across the sandy beaches of Obscuro when she saw a woman in a boat travelling to the island. When she arrived, the Tharn greeted her with kindness, welcoming her to the island. Bellatrix loved the kindness that this woman had given to her. This was later followed by more kindness and care by the rest of the Tharn tribes of Obscuro. Bellatrix, after her hatred and killing, felt at home and finally felt warm after all her bitterness she had witnessed. She started to make friends, and her dark heart started to become warm again. Unbeknown to them, the king had ordered catapults and trebuchets loaded with fireballs to be lined up along the coast and to fire upon Obscuro. The king gave the order, and thousands of fireballs fell upon the paradise island of Obscuro. Bellatrix, hearing the fireballs, immediately protected herself with a force field. The fireballs fell and totally destroyed the forest. Bellatrix watched as her friends burnt alive, screaming in pain as their whole world became an inferno. After the fire had subsided, Bellatrix got up in tears and looked around at the charred bodies of the only people in her life who had shown her a kindness. Bellatrix was so angry and felt so guilty that these people had died because of her. She went to retaliate, but a magical barrier was cast over the island, removing it from view. To her frustration, she could not get out. The years passed and life returned to the island. Some people did stumble across the island, but they never returned. One lord named Varon came to the island in search of a magical flower called the Osensor Viete, for the prince who was dying of a horrible disease. He stepped onto the sandy beach and went forth into the wood to search for this flower. Bellatrix was watching him from afar, and she saw he was different from the others. He was young and very handsome. So not to scare him, she transformed her dark clothes into white ones and changed her brown long hair into blonde. She approached the man and spoke to him. "Hello there, my name is Sapphire. Who are you?" "I am Lord Varon," said the lord, looking surprised to see her. Bellatrix was curious. "What are you doing here?" "I'm looking for the Absensor Viete, a flower that can heal any ailment." He wandered off into the woods and saw the flower bathed in sunlight. Bellatrix followed him and saw him pocket the flower. He asked Bellatrix, "What are you doing here? I thought this place was uninhabited." "I am a Tharn. I am from one of the neighbouring islands," said Bellatrix. Varon looked up and smiled. "A Tharn? Aren't I the lucky one?" "Yes, you are," laughed Bellatrix. Varon started to walk off. "Where are you going?" said Bellatrix. "Well, home, of course, young Tharn. I've got what I've came for." Bellatrix tried to keep him on the island for as long as she could. She jumped in front of him and said, "Oh, but that flower comes at a cost. You must stay here and spend the whole day with me." Varon smiled and said, "How can I refuse such an offer, to spend a whole day with the beautiful Tharn?" They sat on the beach and looked up at the stars. He looked over at Bellatrix and said, "So is it true what they say about Tharn?" Bellatrix laughed and said, "And what do they say about Tharns?" Varon responded, "That they are creatures of pleasure and love, that they know how to please a man. They say once you have a Tharn, you'll never want a human woman again." Bellatrix smiled, and though slightly shocked, she responded, "Yes, that's exactly what they say." The two of them kissed, and the kiss turned to snocking, and the sobbing turned into passionate love-making. Varon did not want to leave the island, or leave Saphir, or Bellatrix. He stayed for a few days, and they turned into weeks and then months. Bellatrix soon announced that she was pregnant, and the both of them rejoiced at their great news. Soon after, another craft arrived at the island, this time carrying an old wizard called Gwydion, the king's royal sorcerer. He walked onto the beach and into the wood and found Varon with Bellatrix, disguised as Saphir. He screamed, "Varon! The prince is near to death. Where is the flower?" Varon was totally forgot about the flower and why he had come to the island in the first place. Gwydion screamed, You must come back immediately to Elesmera with the flower." Gwydion looked over at the woman. "Who is this?" "This is Sapphire, my fiancée. She's a Tharn," said Varon. Gwydion looked at her and laughed. "That's no Tharn!" He stopped, looked at her and said some more. "Who are you?" He stamped his staff, and Saphir transformed her and screamed, "You!" Scared and shocked that she has been discovered, she said, "I'm sorry, Varon. I was not completely honest with you. I'm not a Tharn. but a human. My name is not Sapphire, but Gwydion butted in. She is Bellatrix del Tora, the slaughterer of Seladon. Varon looked at her in total shock. You cannot be the horrible murderess we've all heard about. You would know how to fly. Gwydion took Varon by the arm and started to pull him away from Bellatrix. Bellatrix had tears running down her eyes and said, I am Bellatrix. I am what he says, but I love you, Varon, I truly do. Bellatrix moved closer to Varon, but Gwydion threw her back with magic. Gwydion pulled Varon away and started to walk away. Bellatrix got up in tears, with tears running down her face, and walked desperately towards him, saying, Please, Varon, I love you. You are a snake and a viper, my dear. You are evil and a killer, said Gwydion, still pulling Varon away. Bellatrix screamed, You will not take my love away from me. Bellatrix raised her hand to strike Gwydion down, but Gwydion was quicker, throwing her across the forest. They carried on towards the beach, and Varon accidentally fell over and found himself around a rotting corpse. He jumped immediately and looked around and saw more. Bellatrix caught up with Varon, looked at her in disgust. Did you do this? Yes, I did. The army of Seladon butchered my friends and my family. The poor innocent Tharn, my friends, were burnt to death. The soldiers of Seladon, they had to pay for their crime. I'm sorry. Varon had tears running down his face, and he turned away from Bellatrix and entered the boat. She went after him and was stopped by Gwydion. You let us go, my dear. You go back to your hovel, and you let us go. If you were not pregnant, I would have killed you back in the forest. Be lucky you're alive and forget Varon. Bellatrix fell to the ground and screamed. Her heart was broken. The man she had loved hated her. So she took her hand to her heart and turned it black and dark and cold and heartless. She got up and felt no more pain, only anger and thirst for revenge. But unbeknown to her, the spell she had cast also affected her baby, as they shared the same blood. Eventually she gave birth, and feeling no love for her child, she travelled back to the mainland and entered Elesmera, disguised as Sapphire. She met Varon and gave him the child. He spoke to her. What's happened to you? My heart is cold and dark. I did this to myself because I could not bear the pain of losing you, said Bellatrix. She turned to walk away when Varon said, I love you, Bellatrix. I always will. But Bellatrix kept on walking, as she no longer had any feelings, as her heart was black as coal, and she returned to Obscuro, never to be seen or heard of again. Varon loved his child and called him Vladimir. Vladimir soon discovered at an early age of his extraordinary gifts of magic. As magic was not permitted at the capital, he had to keep it to himself, but he spent hours and hours studying books in the library about magic and magical creatures. Vladimir would constantly ask about his mother, and Varon would always tell him that she was a kind, beautiful and loving person, as this is how he always saw her despite all the killings. He learned to love and make friends, and became a better person, a completely new person, when she was with him. As years passed, Varon died, and passed the title to Vladimir, who became Lord Vladimir of Drakmar. He got along very well with the king, and like Bellatrix with Varon, Vladimir's heart became lighter, but his thirst for knowledge was too strong, and the power was growing with the years. He eventually conjured up the Morgriff, a terrible, huge, fearsome beast. The Morgriff was a horrific beast with huge sharp teeth, muscular torso, and huge claws. The Morgriff terrorized half the kingdom and killed millions. When it came to judgment, Vladimir should have been executed, but the love for his friend was too great, so he was banished to the land of Mithka and to never return. The king should have killed Vladimir there and then, but his emotional compassion would lead to the death and torture of millions over the next 40 years.